आगे इंग्लिश में अब ये जो प्लाट था बेसिक यही है, इसको अब अलग अलग पार्ट्स में पढ़ के हम समझने की कोशिश करेंगे. सो द आवर ऑफ द डिफीटेड. The story opens with Norman Gorsby sitting on a bench in a park in London. It's early March and dusk is setting in, and this pleases Gorsby, who sees dusk as the hour of the defeated, when men and women who had suffered some kind of failure come out, when the evidence of their failure would not be noticed or commented upon. We are told that Gorsby himself has failed, but in a more subtle ambition that's never disclosed. The story of the young man. On the bench next to him is an old gentleman who fits Gorsby's category of those people who come out at dusk. As he moves on, his place is taken by a young man who sits down, uttering a loud expletive. When asked, the young man tells him, Gorsby, that he arrived in London that afternoon to find the hotel he was going to stay in had been knocked down. He went to another hotel, then went out to buy some soap, but forgot the name and address of his new hotel. Gorsby tells the young man he had done the same thing. The young man obviously expresses the hope that Gorsby will lend him some money. Gorsby says that the weak point of this young man's story is that he can't produce the soap. And Gorsby sees this as proof that the young man is trying to trick him. The young man walks off angrily. So, dear students, in the meanwhile, Gorsby himself gets up to move. He looks down and sees a bar of soap that he assumes must have fallen out of the young man's pocket. Distressed, he finds the young man giving him the soap and also some money. So here in the story, this is the last part of the story where you see an old man looking something, bar of soap under the bench, and here it's we can say it's Gorsby. The young man is surprised and rushes off, and Gorsby assumes he is overwhelmed by emotion. Gorsby concludes that he must not be too quick to judge by circumstances. However, when he goes back to the bench, he sees the first old man who was sitting next to him, looking around the floor around the bench. He tells Gorsby he is looking for his soul. So that is about the story, all about the story. Let us try to analyze the character of Gorsby. Norman Gorsby is the main character of the story. He is fairly well dressed and looks like an elite English gentleman. He is confident about his intelligence, judgment, urbanity, and experience. Dear students, Gorsby uses his judgment over the people around him and takes a cynical pleasure in observing and labeling them. He is skeptical. It seems that he regularly sits in the park bench, watching the passing people in the twilight. Dear students, Gorsby is sure to be approached regularly by men and some women who have different stories to tell, but who all want money. He listens to the young man's story of losing his hotel, but his attitude suggests that he has no intention of helping him out with the loan. He even waits until the stranger has finished with his story. The students, we observe that it's truly difficult to master the trait of judgment and trusting the people. Gorsby tried to be very sharp and wise, not to be trapped by the ruse of the young man. But he later allows himself to be conned by his own miscalculations after deducing that the bar of soap belonged to the young man. Actually, it belonged to the old man who was sitting at the bench when Gorsby first came there to sit. Thus, all the intelligence and experience is thrown to winds when Gorsby is fooled by the bar of soap and ends up giving charity to an undeserving swindler. So, dear students, let's move to the very important concept of irony in this story. When Norman Gorsby asked the young man to show him the soap he had bought, the young man said he must have lost it. Norman rightly concluded that the man was lying, so he did not give him any money. When he found a bar of soap under the bench, he ran after the man and apologized for not believing him. Excuse me for not believing you. Without the soap, I didn't think you were telling the truth. But now I'm convinced, Gorsby said. This was an ironic situation because the soap didn't belong to the young man. Norman was convinced by what seemed to be true, but was in fact untrue. So, dear students, let's go to the most important part of the story. That is what lesson we have learned. So, dusk is a time when predators come out. They benefit from the dusk in at least two ways. They can't be recognized by the police who patrol the London streets on foot, and if they are successful in fleecing someone, and in this story, Gorsby, the lead character of the story, who seems to be judgmental, intelligent, and cynical, he won't be able to recognize them again. So that is the basic idea why dusk is there. Now, obviously, the park would be a good hunting ground, and the predators will want to be able to return to the scene of the crime again and again. So that way, dusk. Why name of the dusk? It conveys that in darkness there are always crimes are expected, and criminals are very difficult to be caught or recognized. So that's one of the themes that this story conveys. There are many socially relevant themes which are represented in the story in addition to the above one, such as deception. That's how Gorsby is deceived. Human nature, where you get conned and you think that I am the intelligent person, but you are not. Pessimism, that is the beginning of the story, or the dusk itself conveys pessimism. Perceptions, we have our own perceptions towards life. Uncertainty, that we see there. However, the main theme seems to be the importance and inevitability of fate, as Saki often mocked the overconfident and falsely superior British elites and enjoyed making them victims of fate, right? Another very important theme that we commonly can use is that trusting is hard, but knowing who to trust even harder. This can be understood in the light of the main character's predicament in this story. For Norman Gorsby, the main character of Saki's short story, it's true, as after being betrayed by someone he trusted, he could hardly trust anybody, even if there were facts that supported the person's honesty. On the other hand, it is hard for Norman to know who to trust, as because of a bar of soap he found under the bench, he changed his opinion about the young man he met in the park and lent him some money. Later, he discovered that this man was a liar, which means that actually he wasn't so good to distinguish between people he can trust and ones he can't. Very difficult for all of us. That's a life skill. That is very difficult to trust people and to know who is what. So, dear students, let us see whether we are able to understand this story or not. And this is a beautiful question. Try to do it yourself. Make up your own version of the story. Use these 5 WH questions: who, how, when, and why. Where betrayed Norman Godsby. And that means who betrayed Norman Godsby, when he was betrayed, why he was betrayed, how he was betrayed, where he was betrayed. Write at least 5 sentences. What is the setting in this story? I think in the first 2 slides I talk about that. Try to attempt this question. Choose the 2 correct answers to show you understand the meaning of the underlined words. For example, how do people feel when they are betrayed, hurt, disloyal, disappointed? How do people, and you have to take 2 of these are relevant answers to this. How do people usually feel in a foreign country? Angry, confused, less confident. There are again 2 answers. If people want to be unnoticeable, what don't they want? To be seen, to draw the attention to others, to notice other people. How should we judge people? By their behavior, by their looks, by their character.